Hello, Jen Liss. How are you?
So good. So good.
I am so excited to have you on the show. I'm going to mention this right up at the top, but it will be in the show notes as well. Jen has a podcast, and it's been around now for 3 years, I believe,
Yep, 3 years.
called Untethered. And it is incredible. I really encourage you go check it out. She is just phenomenal at drawing out people's stories and deconstructing them so that she can draw insights and lessons from them. Tuesdays and Thursdays, right?
Tuesday, Thursday. Yes,
Okay.
for the episode with Michelle because it's so good.
Yeah, I had such a great time. And Jen is just one of those people that you listen to. She has the most captivating voice and she has incredible insight and wisdom. So I'm just overjoyed that you have time to talk a bit about your journey and what you're doing.
I'm so excited and honored, and what you say about my voice makes me laugh because my podcast producer, AKA my husband, says I talk like William Shatner. And, people love him. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to embrace my William Shatnerness and roll with it. It's good.
Jen is also a coach and she is a public speaker. And I was hoping, Jen, that you could give us a little bit of where are you now? And then we can talk a little bit about where you've come from.
Yeah, it's such a journey, and we were talking even a little bit before this interview. I'm like, I don't know where it's going, and I think that's the fun of it. That's the scary part, but it's also the fun part. So yes, currently I coach. The speaking thing came to me just last year, and so I've started speaking, podcasting, freaking love it all. It's so much fun. I'm also currently getting my certification to do trauma informed breath work, which sounds like such a wild thing. I had no idea, honestly, why I started doing it. I felt an internal nudgy calling to it. And as I've gone through it, I've realized why. And it really goes back to my history. So I was a hairstylist straight out of high school. I went to college for a couple of years and then went to hair school, which was what I really wanted to do, and ended up running a very successful hair business for 12 years.
I love it. So you had this really successful salon business, and we're talking six-figure business in Kansas. And after being very successful, sought after stylist and business owner, after a while, you felt a calling that you were made for more. Tell us a little bit about that.
That's such a beautiful way of saying it. At the time, I didn't understand what was happening. So let's be clear. Jen, who's standing behind the chair, just could not get another client in. I was so full that I was scheduling, like, I had clients who's 70 years old. They're coming in for a hair appointment at 10 p.m. because I'm like,
Mm.
girl, it's the only time I can get you in. That's how busy it was. And I'm sure
Mm.
you can read through the lines that there's some problems with allowing yourself to be that busy.
Were you just at the point of saturation and burnout?
I think that there was some burnout, and yes. However, it was caused by me just pouring myself into it because I cared so much about people, but I was also just trying to leech something out of it. So I just kept turning into the work, and I didn't realize that what my soul was actually asking for was for me to grow in a new way, to find something more. Like you say, I was being called. I had more gifts than what I was allowed to do in this particular career, in this particular space. And in hindsight, I could have stayed in hair, gone and gotten on stage, gone into education, and I did do some of that. However, there was no clear path and I didn't quite see it. So what I ended up doing was leaving. I left that career. I went back to school and into communications. And that led me into copywriting, marketing, which was perfect for me.
Here you are, you already have a very successful business. You're sought after, you're doing well, and you felt like it wasn't enough, that you wanted more, and you were able to make a change. So many people struggle with they feel like something might be missing, they feel like they're made for more, but why would they leave this steady, successful life for the unknown? And you did it. And my hat is off to you. Huge kudos because that is a really tough thing to do. And so you finished your degree, you went into corporate communications. Tell us a little bit about that experience and that journey for you.
Yeah, I'm going to be real. It was freaking hard when I started. I went out into my car and cried multiple days in a row those first few weeks at that job. And that's just starting something new, I've learned. That it's once you get your grounding, I had so much fun. I had the best coworkers and I worked in a very structured corporate environment, but was able to infuse some fun and creativity into the work that I was doing. And so I think that my past as a hairstylist was allowing me, as I got more comfortable in myself, to start to infuse that. But at first, I was trying to 100% live in that corporate box. And there is a corporate box.
And you want to fit in. I know all of that so, so well. So you spent a while doing corporate comms.
Yes, I spent a while doing corporate comms and I ended up leaving that company and moving into more employee experience, but it was still employee communication, still employee focus. So I spent 7 years doing that. And it was within 5 years of this career and maybe even a little less. I felt that feeling that I had felt in hair and I didn't recognize it until it really had gotten pretty severe. And at this point, I was like, I'm being called. I'm being called to more. There's something else here. And so I started turning inward and I got a coach. And that coach helped support me, helped me do self reflection. And that has moved me into the space that I'm in now that you mentioned at the top of the episode speaking, coaching, doing all of that. And when I look back, it's, oh, all of the skills that I have learned along the way have threaded their way here because say for breath work, you're facilitating, which is something I did in corporate comms. However, it requires the empathy, the grounding, making people feel safe while they're doing something they've never done before. All of those skills I've learned along the way. Like I've been called to more and listened. I listened.
That's the remarkable part of the story and why I think you inspire so much is the fact that so many of us get the call. I know a lot of people out there feel I could be doing more. I'm made for more, but are afraid or unsure and don't know what to do. So I think this idea of you listened and you took action is just remarkable. And we're talking about very distinct career choices, and you've been successful at all of them. You were recently in a speakers competition and you were in the top 10 finalists.
Yeah. Yeah. I got to go to Toronto,
Incredible.
Canada on stage. It was so fun. It was so much fun.
I mean, it's incredible. Everything Jen touches with, I think that the key here is alignment and authenticity. She excels at. And I think that that's probably a lesson for all of us to really look at if you listen to that call and you really heed to what your spirit or your soul is calling you to. I don't want to say it's been effortless because I know it's not, but you are shining, no doubt.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it has not been without effort. And there's always that behind the scenes, it doesn't always feel good. It does not always feel good. This metaphor came to me just last night, and it's so perfect for this conversation that I love roller coasters, but there are certain parts of roller coasters that are not really fun. The best part of the roller coaster is the release after the top. Like there's so much fear as you're riding
As
up.
that build up, it's terrifying.
Then you reach that climax, like so freaking terrifying. And then once you start going down, you're screaming and laughing and letting go. And then you go up more hills and there's some more of that feeling. I don't like the feeling of going up, whether it's slow or whether it's fast, but that feeling of coming down, if you never make the leap, if you're called to more and you don't make that leap, you are constantly ticking up that
Ugh,
roller coaster.
so true. You just hit the nail on the head. But you don't actually get to go through the growth spurt without that uncomfortable climb, that uncomfortable tick, 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 tick up. But the growth comes on the release down.
Yes.
Ah,
And that's the fun part. Allow yourself to go over the hill. Like allow yourself to get the release because otherwise you're just like ticking up forever and you're just like anticipating and you're not allowing yourself to have the experience. That's the fun of life. We're constantly growing and we're being called to things for a reason, but we stop ourselves from doing it. Another great visual that I love to talk about is hermit crabs because hermit crabs, they're in their little shell,
Right.
and eventually they get to a point of needing to leave that shell because they've outgrown it, and they get so uncomfortable inside of that shell. So they
Mm.
leave, but we don't leave as humans. We just decide to stay in there and get so stinking uncomfortable. So I hope that these two metaphors can really set with your listeners. Like, am I being the hermit crab that won't leave its shell? Or am I like ticking up that roller coaster forever? Because
Constantly in the tick up and never in the release. Oof.
never in the release. Never in the
All
release.
right.
Like, you've got to let yourself like swim into the ocean or fly down the hill, like it's the scary part, but it's the best part.
So, what do you think as you reflect on your own journey and the fact that you have allowed yourself to make these changes? What do you think is the biggest hurdle for those people who get stuck in the hermit crab shell and have outgrown it and still don't take the leap? What do you think is the
100% for people like me, expectations.
Hmm.
110%. It's expectations. It's expectations of others, of yourself, of society, of your job, of all of the things that you think you should be doing, you know?
So, talk to me a little bit about the coaching work. What is it that drew you specifically to coaching? And what kind of journeys are you helping people go down?
Yeah, that's a beautiful question. So that has been a really interesting road that started when I began to turn inward while I was still in that corporate job. And coaching, I resisted it. I resisted it. And I tried so many different other things. I'm like, okay, I'm going to create a greeting card company. Oh, now I'm going to, because I was a copywriter, and my mom works at Hallmark. And I tried all of these different things. I had a creative something really highly focused on creativity for a while, and then people kept telling me, you should be coaching, why aren't you coaching? And I didn't see it for myself, and I think that's the biggest challenge. It's so hard to see ourselves clearly, and we have to have other people help us reflect, and that's here's the irony, that's what a coach does.
Well, what do you think is the biggest misconception that you had about coaching that you
Yeah,
resisted about it?
I had imposter syndrome about it. It was 100% simply imposter syndrome of just not seeing myself in that role. So, yeah, that's all.
It's
That's
so
all.
funny because I totally see it. Tell me a little bit about the journeys because I do think when we think about coaching and personal development, there isn't necessarily a lot of understanding of what that process looks like or what a journey looks like. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, that's such a good question, and it feels very ethereal. The journey is helping you get from point A to point B. I want to stand on a stage. Perhaps that's somebody's goal. Or I want to change careers, or I want a more fulfilling career. Where that thing is, then in the process of getting there, you work with a coach who's going to help you root out that thing that's stopping you from getting there. Like, you feel it. What
Yeah.
is the thing that's stopping you from getting there? And then what are the things that we can put in place to help you overcome that thing? So, from a very high level, it's what do you want? What's getting in the way? And how can we get you to B? Because you're currently sometimes at like negative A. What would that be?
What is it that you want people to know about change? You've gone through a lot of changes.
Mm, mhm.
What would you advise people? I can just imagine the people listening right now are on the precipice and would love to make a change, and change seems scary. What would you say?
Change is scary. 100%. It's supposed to be scary. That's how your brain works because it wants to stay in homeostasis. That is your biology. 100% you are supposed to be scared of change. If you're not, then something's probably off balance. Fear is a huge part of how we function. We need it. What you need to recognize with change and with fear is that on the other side of fear is everything that you want. And the
Mm,
opposite of fear is your enthusiasm for something. So if you're afraid, the flip side of that coin is your enthusiasm. So you're wanting something, and so you're afraid. Those two things go together. They go together. So if you're afraid, there's something you want. There's something you want on the other side of it. And so really sitting with that and recognizing that making the decision to do the thing is it's a vote for the thing you want. It's a vote for your own enthusiasm and joy. It's not that the fear is like even in the way, it's a signal. It's just a signal. That's all it's doing for you. It's saying, "Hey, there's something you want." I hope that's helpful.
I
Yeah.
love that. Everything you want is on the other side of fear. I think that is such a poignant quote. I've seen it out there. It's worth
Thanks.
repeating because I think we often think, well, if I feel fear, it must not be meant for me. And that's not the case. Actually, fear, the way you're describing it, is a signal of where your enthusiasm and passion for that thing actually is. And what you want is on the other side of it. I think we often misunderstand fear. Fear is a signal of what you actually want, and it's helping you to get clear. If I walk through this instead of avoid it, I'm gonna get to where I wanna be much sooner.
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
love that. Tell me a little bit about the speaking, because I don't think most people say, "Hey, public speaking, that's something I wanna try." It's probably, I think, number 1 fear people have is of public speaking. I don't know if that's still the case, but it certainly was ranked high up there at one time. Tell me a little
Yeah.
bit about how you even said, "Yeah, why not? Public speaking."
Not in my vision board. Public speaking was not in my vision board. I never said, I want to
Mm.
speak. I want to use my voice. I have always defined myself as an introvert. I love alone time. I love people. I've never been able to control my energy in groups of people. I now with breath work, I have fortunately learned what's going on there. But previously in my life, I had never understood that, and so being in particularly small groups of people, big groups of people, fine. Small groups of people, intimate groups of people sucks the life out of me.
'Cause you because you have to be on, you feel like you have
Yeah.
to connect? Okay. Whereas
Yes,
you can
have to
be a
be
little
on.
bit more anonymous in a larger group setting.
Exactly. That's
Gotcha.
exactly it.
'Cause one-on-one, you're phenomenal. So, it's hard to imagine, but I get it. I get it.
Yes, exactly. So standing in front of a class, small group of people who you know, and you have to deliver your public speaking, like just a sweaty mess. Public speaking in college was my least favorite class. Yeah, it was not something that I consciously chose. However, it came to me in a meditative vision. I was meditating one day and all of a sudden I saw myself speaking on stage. And I was like, where did that come from? I had not been planning for that. And then this speaking opportunity that you're talking about, it came to me. I did not seek it out. It popped into my inbox one day from a former teacher who was like, "Hey, there's this speaking opportunity. Would you be interested?" And I said yes. And so I did it.
Incredible. Tell us a little bit about that because I think it's an international speaking competition. This is a big deal. Tell us about the environment because I can't even imagine here's a person who is intimidated by a class speaking is now going to speak in front of thousands. It
Yeah.
just blows my mind. Tell us a
Yeah.
little bit about the whole experience.
Thank you for asking that question because I want your listeners to know how terrified I was and how much I avoided it. Because I said yes. And then it came time to submit my speaking video. We had to record a video to even get to like actually participate in the bigger competition itself. And I avoided it, avoided it, avoided it. It's due at 8 p.m. Eastern time on a Friday.
Oof.
And it's I'm not joking. It's 4 p.m. Pacific time. So like that would be 5 p.m. Pacific time. So it's 4 here. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna sit down and record this video. I did 5 takes at it. Left the 5th one, I'm like, that's good enough. And I submitted that thing. Like that is how down to the wire how much I avoided submitting this video. So this is normal. This is normal that you will avoid things. Like I had so much fear. And on the other side of that fear, I had no idea how much beautiful enthusiasm was lying on the other side of that because once I got to that level, like I submitted my video and then I performed it live, virtually, but live. I had so much fun. I had so much fun preparing for that live presentation, doing the live presentation. And then I did that and I made it to the next level. And that was the on stage in Toronto, Canada. And that was like one of my top days of my life. Had so much fun. I didn't win, and it was so much fun.
I mean, the fact that you made it to the on-stage part of the competition, I mean, that's incredible. Really, my hat is off to you because it is such a nerve-wracking process to go through that, and I've been public speaking for years and years and years, and anyone who says they don't get butterflies right before they go on or even well before they go on is not being honest because that's what happens to even the most seasoned public speakers. But you're absolutely right. Like, there's an adrenaline rush. Particularly, I think when you have a live audience, they're exciting and electrifying and all the things.
Mhm.
Tell us what you spoke about.
So in the first speech that got me to the point of being on stage, it was about living your life stuck in somebody else's bathtub, which is that expectations bit that I talked about. When you're living according to the expectations of what you think you should be living, you're living in somebody
Mm.
else's bathtub. I don't know if you remember, like, swinging on the swing sets when you're a kid,
Yeah.
and what we used to do is, like, get out of my bathtub when you're swinging with your friend at the same level, at the same pace. Do you know what I'm talking about? We'd be like, "Get out
I've
of
never
my
heard that phrase, but I do know that feeling, and I remember, like, "You can go at the same pace I'm going." Yeah.
Right, yes, we
Oh my
call it
god,
"get
that's
out of my
so
bathtub." So
funny.
it just made me laugh. So that one got me there, and then I did a ton of exploration on, like, okay, what should this next speech be? And it had the theme of evolution, which is such a big holy
Ooh.
baloney. That topic was like, oh my gosh, like you could talk about so many things and it made it really challenging to figure out what to talk about. What I decided to talk about was that so many of us have tamped down our sparkle, which also goes back to it's the fear of expectations and what you think other people are thinking you should be living. And so what you think they think you should be doing. And so you stamp down the person who you are. And so, like when we do that, we aren't living to our highest and best, and we aren't listening to our inner wisdom. If there's some calling, if there's some like little urge for you to speak on stage or write a book or start a podcast or change careers or whatever that thing is, and you don't do it, you're not listening to your inner wisdom. And that is like your sparkle unicorn inside of you that is just like rearing to become the next version of its beautiful self. So that is what that speech was about. And then also just the expectations that we place on each other. That it's two-sided, right? Like we feel like the expectations are there and then we're also placing them on other people. It's like, let's just allow ourselves to be our beautiful, sparkly selves.
Right. I think that dimming of the light is such a chronic problem. People have these callings, they feel this, but they're like, oh, that's not meant for me. That's somebody else, not me. And that's such a tragedy because we need your light. We need everyone to be their authentic selves. If can you imagine if everyone actually heeded the call and stepped into their power, into their authentic power and who they're aligned to be, how much more peaceful this whole world would be because we wouldn't be at war with ourselves internally and we wouldn't be so resentful with the rest of the world. We'd feel ourselves for the first time, right? And I think that's really what we all want to be and it's such a challenge. I think that to remind people that feeling of showing up as your most true self is your right. It's your responsibility. And you're doing it, Jen. That's what I love. You're doing it. You are shining a light for others. You're here now to guide others on that path to find their light, to shine their light, to get it out in the world. And I'm so excited to see what comes next.
Thank you. In that speech, I talked about it as your inner Tinkerbell. Like each of us has this inner Tinkerbell. And I came up with that concept because when I was a little kid, I literally thought I was Tinkerbell. I
I
thought I
love it.
was.
Of course
I
you
would
did.
I would skate around. My parents had bought this house and the basement wasn't finished. And so it was just like we could roller skate down there. And for
I
some
used
reason,
to do the
you
same
did the same?
thing, and I broke my arm going too
Oh,
fast and tripping over some toys, but we would
oh no.
see roller derby. How fast could you go in a circle around the unfinished basement?
Yes, so fun. Somebody, for some reason, in this house had installed disco lights. So we would play music and skate around, and it was so much fun. Anyway, I just like envisioned myself just like shooting glitter all over the place, and it was just like so much fun. But at some point, I just got this message that, like, I mean, obviously, like, you aren't Tinkerbell, like, that's just the logical thing, but the message just went so deep to me that it's not safe. It's not safe to shine. It's not safe to believe that you are magical. It's not safe to believe in your inner magic. Like, shut it down, shut it down, shut it down.
Mm.
And with that came so much that you're talking about there. Comes resentment, because we do resent, like, pushing down ourselves, right? So then it comes to a point where you forget your own magic. And really, what we all could be doing is really uncovering, like, what is that magic? What is that thing that lights me up? What gives me the feeling of skating so freely around that basement, right?
I remember distinctly thinking similar thoughts, being 8, 9, 10, even, and thinking, "I'm gonna be an actress," or "I'm gonna be a singer, and I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna go do that." And then as I got older, I was like, "Oh, apparently the more preferred career paths are," and then, it was like business, lawyer, doctor, then you start to try to fit into one of those boxes, right? And then that's where I think people get tripped up. I guess this is what they expect of me, so I should do this versus following your heart. And I think that's such a beautiful thing as adults to be able to allow ourselves to go back and go, okay, so who is it that I'm really truly meant to be? What are my gifts? What is my calling? Because the worst thing that could happen is you go through life not really enjoying what you're doing or enjoying it, but realizing you are made for more, not heeding the call, and you never reach your full potential. I mean, that's a tragedy. That's a tragedy right there. And I think a lot of people out there, the thought is, but I'm doing okay. I'm making a good living. It's all good. I don't want to push my luck. And the reality is, but what if you were really indeed made for more and life got even better because you followed your heart and your calling? That's the part where I think people are like, but who knows? I might fail. But what if you succeed? We're almost afraid to allow ourselves to think that way.
I agree with you. I don't know what's at the end of this road. And I think that's what's so beautiful about trusting the unfolding and listening. Something that you said there that I think is so important is that we often think of the cost of failure, but we don't think of the cost of not allowing ourselves to fail,
Mm.
which can be so great. That cost, it's unknown to you, right? But you have to trust. You absolutely have to trust that urge, that nudge, that quiet, that little voice that is saying something to you that says you're made for more. I think that voice, it is talking to you for a reason, and it is telling you to go out there and risk that failure. Like, go out there and give it a shot. And not everybody's called for more, but if they're listening to your podcast, they are. Because it's
And I'm
not called, live your, like, kind of sort
live
of
your
okay life.
exactly. It's a live your extraordinary life. And here's the reality. It's a journey and it's a process. And what it looks like is going to be different for each of us. And there is going to be a lot of discomfort on the way, but that's part of the journey. And the beauty is, as you said, everything you want is on the other side of fear.
Mm.
Jen, I'm going to let you have the last word before we wrap.
Last word, you're uncomfortable either way. What you just said there is like,
Mm.
you are uncomfortable either way. You're either riding that tick, tick, tick roller coaster up forever and never allowing yourself release, or you're allowing yourself to go over that hill and have that short little moment so that you can just feel alive and free, which is what your soul is craving. So give your
Mm.
soul the gift of allowing it the feeling of ecstasy and joy. So many of us don't allow ourselves enough joy, and that was me for a lot of years. So I'm just so passionate about it. Thank you so much for having me on.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for coming on. Where can people find you, Jen?
Yeah, you can find my podcast. It's called Untethered with Jen Liss in all the podcast places. And I'm on Instagram at untetheredjen. And then my website is jenliss.com, where you can find all of those things.
Yeah. Please give it a listen. Untethered, anywhere you listen to your podcasts. Jen Liss, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for coming on and having this conversation. And I hope you will come back.
Heck yeah, I would
All
love that.
right. I love it. All right. Thanks, Jen.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please comment, like, and subscribe to this channel to continue to receive content that inspires. Let us know what resonates and what you'd like to hear more about. You are here for a purpose. It's time for you to step into that purpose, become the most authentic version of you, and start living, truly living your extraordinary life. It's never too late. And in fact, we're just getting started.